video came from YouTube.
It's trending on Twitter.
Why is it not on the news?
The lion will lie down with the lamb.
Come on! I'm starting the show here. We're rolling.
Unbiased and on the fence.
Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. So glad you could join me. Well, this episode is all about Alan Watts. He's been a really big inspiration for me lately on my quest for truth and understanding. And as you noticed there in the intro, I got the clip of the lion and the lamb scripture. For those who are unaware of the whole Mandela Effect, that popular scripture is no longer in the Bible that way with the lion and the lamb. It is now the wolf and the lamb, Isaiah 11:6. And for those who knew their Bible and they knew that scripture, look it up. It looks as if it's always said wolf and the lamb. It's like it's supernaturally changed. And it's mind-blowing because a lot of us are sort of puzzled by the way nobody sees these changes. And rightly so, because, you know, things have changed in an impossible way. And then on top of that, you try to show people and they're like, no, it's always been that way. So it's pretty trippy. I think for those who are new to the Mandela Effect, let me show you a few other things that sort of got me. These are my 100% changes. This nickel right here has been our main nickel here in America since 2006. That was news to me. It's been around longer than my youngest kid, yet I didn't know about it until this last year in 2017. But it appears to have been our main nickel for over a decade. This is now the current thinker statue, Rodin's thinker. Many of us remember it with the fist to the forehead. And here's another one, the VW logo. This is how many of us remember it, although now it appears to have always had this break in it. Here's another one of my 100%ers, Febreze. I definitely remember the double E's, but now it appears it's always been spelled this way. And then Looney Tunes, you know, I grew up watching it. I know it was spelled tunes, like a play on the word cartoons, but now it appears it's always been tunes, as in music or frequency. Fruit Loops was another big one. For me, I know it was spelled normal like fruit, but now it's spelled with the double O's. And a really big one for me. And Jose, thanks for jumping in the chat, moderating. She actually gave me some great residue in a game she had that showed it was life is like a box of chocolates. And we can't see that one, but the location of the heart. Now here's a new one that somebody brought up in the comments not long ago. And I don't even know that I saw this movie, but I remember being in the video store when I was younger and seeing this videotape. This was back when I would have to, you know, go to Blockbuster Video and rent movies or whatever. And I specifically remember, so I married an axe murderer. It's kind of getting cut off there. He's got the flowers behind his back. Does anybody remember what she used to have behind her back? Apparently she never had anything behind her back in this reality. Pretty strange. So when we look at these Mandela Effect changes, and it appears they've always been that way, and I brought up in the last video about NPCs, non-player characters, just that it seems like maybe part of the population are real people and everything, but they aren't part of the main, they're like extras in the movie, so to speak. They're not essential to your main story that you're living out or whatever. Who knows? I know, you know, they should be treated with compassion and love and just like anybody else. But the main reason I brought it up is that when you go, for anybody that's new to the Mandela Effect, if this is just news to you on this video that I'm sharing here, then be warned that you'll tell people about the Mandela Effect and they'll seem like they've always, things have always been the way they are. They don't see the changes for whatever reason. And it can get pretty alarming on top of things changing when people don't see it. You know, there's a big community of us that see it, but for the most part it seems like at least the majority of the people aren't seeing it or can't see it or don't want to see it or whatever. So with the Mandela Effect, I think when I was talking about the NPCs, I think an important part of that was the fact that if someone's not seeing it, not to trip off of it. We don't need to get bent out of shape if they're not seeing it. Just let them be. Either they'll see it later on their own time, or they won't see it at all. And so just to be relaxed about it. Something else I wanted to talk about, the Mandela Effect. Oh, that the Mandela Effect, as much as, you know, you want to go out and talk to other people about it, I think it's really for the people who see it. I'm starting to realize how it's really for the eyes of the beholder, so to speak, and that, you know, we can really stay in control of our emotions and everything. That's why I wanted to play a few clips from Alan Watts, because another one that, I'll give you an example with the Mandela Effect. Jim Carrey's name, for me, used to have one R in Carrey. Now it has two R's. So I looked into Jim Carrey because of that, and then that brought me to Alan Watts. So it was like the Mandela Effect of the spelling of his name changed to bring me to the information of Alan Watts, which confirmed a lot of the information I had already been sort of covering on this channel for a while now. And I've even had a few people say, check out Alan Watts, but I didn't check it out. Then Jim Carrey's name changed, and it sort of brought me back to Alan Watts. It's like everything is orchestrated. And I think really just the chaos and the entropy of reality is truly an illusion. It's just all part of the play, if you will. And Alan Watts had a wonderful lecture where he spoke about how, you know, we go and watch a play, and, you know, you've got the villain and you've got, you know, the hero, and at the end of the show everyone comes out and bows and everybody claps for both sides and everybody played their part well. And you know, when you just think of duality and the contrast between darkness and light, the darker the darkness is, or the blacker black is, the whiter white is, or the brighter the light is, so to speak. So the contrast in there really is needed, because, you know, how can something smell great if there isn't a foul smell to compare it to, right? So I think just the duality of everything is really something we can rise above. And I know a lot of people are dealing with depression and, you know, what's the word, just feeling like impatient. You know, we're expecting things to happen, and, you know, I was in this boat too, and working through the I Am discourses that I have a playlist for. If you haven't listened to them, you can check them out for yourself. But it helped me out a lot, because it really got me looking within. It got me looking at the now, the present moment, instead of sort of looking into the future for some future event, for something to happen. You know, I do feel like we're actually in the middle of ascension, but on a cosmic scale, things just move so slowly. So yeah, so, you know, you can grow impatient, and a lot of my depression stemmed from being impatient. And, you know, I'm not a very depressed person, but as depressed as I can get. You know, I just, you know, just got worn out and tired, and just felt like a grind, you know, like, come on already, when is this going to end? When are we going to move on to something bigger and better, so to speak? So after listening to Alan Watts, one of the things that he brought out that was so helpful for me was talking about how life is more like the arts, like music. Like when you go to listen to a piece in the symphony, and, you know, you're supposed to really enjoy the whole thing. Or, you know, a fireworks show, you're not really just waiting for the finale. Or the dance, you're not just waiting for that last move. It's sort of, you know, and then there's that country song, The Climb, where it's not really getting to the top of the hill, it's the climb. And I think that's really where a lot of us need to shift. I mean, it helped me out anyway, shifting from looking to the end, or when things are going to change, to really being in the now, sort of sitting back and enjoying the show. And when you do that, you can sort of, what's helpful is when you rise above the duality, you see everybody playing as people playing their parts, and it really is helpful. The clips I want to play The first one, rising above the situations. This is a clip I want to play from Alan Watts, and I will come and join you all in the chat here while this is playing out here.
Is either an advantage or a disadvantage. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. And all the neighbors came around to commiserate that evening. So sorry to hear your horse has run away. That's too bad. And he said, maybe. The next day, the horse came back, bringing 7 wild horses with it. And everybody came around in the evening and said, oh, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. You've now got 8 horses. And he said, maybe. The next day, his son tried to break one of these horses and ride it, and was thrown and broke his leg. And they all said, oh dear, that's too bad. And he said, maybe. The following day, the conscription officers came around to recruit, to force people into the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. And all the people came around and said, isn't that great? And he said, maybe. You see, that is the attitude of not thinking of things in terms of gain or loss, advantage or disadvantage, because you don't really know. The fact that you might get a letter from a solicitor, from a law office tomorrow, saying that some distant relative of yours had left you $1 million, it might be something you would feel very, very happy about. But the disasters that it could lead to are unbelievable. Internal revenue. To mention only one possibility. So you never really know whether something is fortune or misfortune. We only know the momentary changes, and as it alters our sense of hope about things. The Taoist is wise enough eventually, you see, to understand that there isn't any fixed good or bad. And so his point of view is what is called non-choosing. Well, anyway, Lietze attempted to keep his mind in a state of non-choosing. And this was a very difficult thing to do, to overcome one's habits of feeling and thinking in this respect. And after he had practiced this for a year, the master looked at him and, sort of recognized he was there. After another year's practice, he invited him to come and sit inside his hut. And then, however, something changed. And Lietze didn't try anymore to control his mind. What he did was, he put it in this way. I let my ears hear whatever they wanted to hear. I let my eyes see whatever they wanted to see. I let my feet move wherever they wanted to go. And I let my mind think of whatever it wanted to think. And then he said it was a very strange sensation because all my bodily existence seemed to melt and become transparent and to have no weight. And I didn't know whether I was walking on the wind or the wind was walking on me. Now that's the fasting of the heart.
And that is the end of the first clip. Let's see. That was rising above the situations to go into what I was speaking about. Now, this next clip is about learning to just observe, and when you observe, you can just let things happen. Because at the heart of it, really, what can we possibly do? It seems like, it's sort of like, I think of it like, personally, I don't know if any of you guys did this when you were a kid, just you have 2 magnets and you try to get them as close as you can without letting them suck together, or you turn them around with the same poles and you try to push them together and it goes one way or the other. But that's sort of how it seems like it's easy to get sucked into something when you toy around with it. You can, you might not plan to get sucked into it, but it seems like inevitably, if you get too involved with things, you do get sucked into it, even if it's a good cause.
Seeing that there isn't really anything we can do to improve ourselves or to improve the world, if we realize that that is so, it gives us a breather in the course of which we may simply watch what is going on. Watch what happens. Nobody ever does this, you know. And therefore, it sounds terribly simple. It sounds so simple that it looks as if it isn't worth doing. But you ever just watched? Watch what's happening, and watch what you are doing by way of reaction to it. Just watch it happen. And don't be in a hurry to think you know what it is. In other words, people look at say, oh, that's the external world. Oh, how do you know? The whole thing, from a neurological point of view, is a happening in your head. That you think there is something outside the skull is a notion in your nervous system. There may or may not be, but it's a notion in your nervous system. You think this is the material world. Well, that's somebody's philosophical idea. Or maybe you think it's spiritual. That too is somebody's philosophical idea. This real world is not spiritual. It is not material. The real world is simply so could we look at things in that way? Without, as it were, fixing labels and names and gradations and judgments on everything, but watch what happens. Watch what we do. Now you see, if you do that, you do at least give yourself a chance. And it may be that when you are in this way freed from busybodiness and being out to improve everything, that your own nature will begin to take care of itself, because you're not getting in the way of yourself all the time. You will begin to find out that the great things that you do are really happenings. For example, no great genius can explain how he does it. Yes, he says, I have learned a technique to express myself. Because I had something in me that had to come out, I had to know how to give it out. So if I were a musician, I had to learn how music is produced. That means learning to use an instrument or learning a technique of musical notation or whatever it may be. If I want to describe something, I have to learn a language so that others can understand me. I need a technique. But then beyond that, I'm afraid I can't tell you how it was that I used that technique to express this mysterious thing I wanted to show you. If we could tell people that, we would have schools where we would infallibly train musical geniuses, scientific miracle minds. And there would be so many of them, we wouldn't know what to do with them. Geniuses would be a dime a dozen. And then we would say, well, these people are after all not very ingenious. You know, PhDs, how many of them are there? Because what is fascinating always about genius is the fellow does something we can't understand. He surprises us. But you see, just in the same way, we cannot understand our own brains. Neurology knows relatively little about the brain, which is only to say that the brain is a lot smarter than neurology. Yes, there is this, which can perform all these extraordinary intellectual and cultural miracles. But we don't know how we did it. But we did. We didn't.
And that's the second clip I wanted to play. All of these links are in the description, so you can check out the entire videos later. They are all good. I did watch them all, and I just made notes of a few of these things that sort of went along with what I wanted to say in this video. This next clip is, let's see if I've got it queued up right here. Okay, so this is this clip goes along with, we've talked in the past about how, you know, God subdivided himself and gave himself amnesia to play this out, and really, you know, a lot of people think of it as the New Age thought that everyone's God. Or I always use the analogy of water, that you know, if God is water, we're all like little droplets of the water. We're not the whole ocean, but we're like fractals of the Godhead. And when I came across this clip by Alan Watts, he really described it eloquently. Check this out.
Well, what would you do if you were God? Or let me put it in a simpler way. Supposing that every night you could dream any dream you wanted to dream, what would you do? Well, first of all, I'm quite sure that most of us would dream all the marvelous things we wanted to happen. We would fulfill all our wishes. And we might go on that way for months. Besides, you could make it extraordinarily rich by wishing to dream 75 years in one night, full of glorious happenings. But after you've done that for a few months, you might begin to get a little tired of it. And you would say, what about an adventure tonight, in which something terribly exciting and rather dangerous is going to happen, but I'll know I'm dreaming, so it won't be too bad. And I'll wake up if it gets too serious. So you do that for a while. You rescue princesses in distress from dragons and all sorts of things. And then when you've done that for some time, you say, now let's go out a bit further. Let's forget it's a dream and have a real thrill. Ooh. But you know you'll wake up. And then you get, after you've done that for a while, you get more and more nerve until you sort of dare yourself as to how far out you can get. And you end up dreaming the sort of life you're living now. Now, why does one do that? Why would one do that? The reason, the Hindu would say, is that the basic pulse of life, the basic motivation of existence, is what we call the game of hide and seek. Now you see it, now you don't. You see, everything's based on that, because all life is vibration, pulsing. Light is a pulsation of light-darkness. Sound is a pulsation of sound-silence. Everything is going at various speeds. And in order to have, say, it's like the motion of a wave. Now, a wave consists of two pulses, the crest and the trough. You can't have crests without troughs. You can't have troughs without crests. They always go together. You can't have hide without seek. You can't have seek without hide. Just for example, you can't have here without there, because if you didn't know where there was, you wouldn't know where here was. You can't have is without isn't, because you don't know what you mean by is unless you also know what you mean by isn't, and vice versa. So in that way, they think that hide and seek is the fundamental game. As if the Lord, God, the Brahman as they call it, said in the beginning, get lost, man. Disappear, and I'll find you again later. And then when, you know, the disappearance gets very far out, then the contrary rhythm begins, and the dreamer wakes up and finds out, whew, that was a relief. And then after a rest period in which everything is, of course, at peace, it starts all over again, because the spirit of adventure springs eternal.
And that totally sounds like me. Back to the analogy with the magnets. keep taking it a little bit further, daring yourself to go a little bit further with the dream, because eternity is a long time, and you can totally imagine sort of pushing yourself to the limits with something like that. So one of my dealings, I guess, with coming to the realization that everything is really just as it should be. Each level of everything, even religion, if you will. You know, I thought about how when my nephew was born when I was a kid, and he was throwing this fit. He was about 18 months old, and my dad was holding him, and he wouldn't behave, so my dad like smacked the back of his hand. You know, his hand was on the diaper, but he smacked his hand. He said, "Hey, quit that," or whatever, you know, and with a stern voice. And you know, the baby, like, his eyes got real big, like he was, you know, like he got a spanking, even though, you know, my dad really just hit his hand or whatever. And he sort of got shocked back into realizing that you know, he was acting in a way he shouldn't act. Well, on the same hand, you know, the way religion, a lot of religion uses fear, you know, maybe that's needed for some people at first, to realize that, hey, there will be consequences for what you do, and it's just sort of simpler to have this idea of hell for a while. But when you think of it in that sense, it's almost like it should be a stepping stone. We would always call new Christians baby Christians, but in a sense, we should all be moving into a deeper understanding at some point. We should at some point realize that hell is just this idea to sort of make us realize that there's consequences for what we do. It's sort of should be thought of symbolically rather than this real place of eternal torment, because a loving God wouldn't ever torment his children for eternity. I mean, would you ever even stick your kid in a corner for eternity for anything they ever did? And that's not even torturing. That's just telling him to stand in the corner. And, you know, like the one scripture where that says, you know, who of you would give your kid a scorpion if he asked for an egg, or a serpent if he asked for a fish, or a rock if he asked for a loaf of bread? And then it says, if you're evil and you know how to give your kids good gifts, how much more will your Father in heaven give you good gifts? Well, that doesn't align with burning people forever, because, you know, if I'm evil and I wouldn't burn my kid or even make him stand in the corner forever, then how could a loving Father in heaven do such a thing, right? So I'm starting to see how everything has its place, and everything is just as it should be. And it's really, you know, that we need to look within and move forward, work on self-development, and search out that deeper knowledge on our own. It's really up to us to do that. So this next clip is really talking about how those answers are really within, and that's really what gurus push us towards.
There's a little game going on which I'm going to initiate you into. And it's played in Zen, which is it works like this. If you go to a teacher and ask for spiritual instruction, or even if you come to a seminar like this, you are, by doing that, confusing yourself. Because you are looking for what you're asking for outside, as if someone else could give it to you, as if you didn't have it. So the teacher knows that as long as you do that, you haven't understood. But he doesn't just tell you to go away. Or he may sometimes just say, go away, I'm too busy. And in any case, I can't tell you anything. Well, people won't take that for an answer. They won't take no for an answer. And furthermore, if he just said go away, they would just find some other teacher who would exploit them and maybe keep them as followers for years and acquire a great deal of money by so doing. But what he does is another thing. He tries to give them the put down.
as if to say, you have a great long distance to go yet. Your attainment is not at all perfect. And they're always talking about other sects and other schools and saying, well, they haven't really got the point, you see? So that you keep losing faith in yourself and feeling, my goodness, I haven't yet attained this thing. And that keeps you working. But all the time, you're being talked out. It's like someone who's a pickpocket and he's stolen your own watch and is selling it to you. But just so long as you can be talked out of yourself, you deserve to be. Now, you become very aware of this. If you ever do momentarily slip into some sort of mystical experience, you become aware of this tremendous gamesmanship going on. And you see it as sort of continuous with all sorts of cosmic games that are going on, of creatures eating other creatures up, and the creatures that get eaten, of course, transform themselves into the creatures that eat them, and then in turn eat other creatures. And you see the whole hide-and-seek game going on, and then you realize very clearly that the state of development that you are in now is no better and no worse than anybody else's state. Because it's like space again. Which planet is in, or which star is in the best position? Well, it's all equal. They're all in the middle. Any one can be considered as the center one. Any point on a sphere is the center of the surface of the sphere. So, in the same way, everybody, in all his behavior, whatever he's doing, whether we call him from a certain point of view sick, or whether we call him healthy, whether we call him good or bad, neurotic, normal, psychotic, sane, all the manifestations are just like the leaves on the trees. And in each being in a unique way is, as Christians would say, manifesting the will of God. So, there really, from that point of view, you see, there is nothing to do to attain Buddhahood. Nothing at all. But you see, that's very difficult to understand, because a lot of people, when they hear that there's nothing to do, try to do nothing. And you can't. Because you are karma, and karma means action. You can't do nothing. But the thing you're looking for, or think you're looking for, is what you're doing. Is what's called you. Only, of course, as we all know, we've got ourselves into the idea that oneself is so difficult to see. Because it's like, as I've often said, trying to bite your own teeth or look into your own eyes, and you can't find it. It's always behind. It's like your head is, from the optical point of view, a blank space. Neither light nor dark. It's right in the middle of everything. And so, one of the great tricks of gurus is to set people looking for their heads. There's a famous story of a king in India in ancient times called Yajnadatta. And one morning he woke up and reached out for his mirror and brought it over.
No head. He was looking in the wrong side of the mirror. And you know, he was kind of bleary-eyed and had a hangover. So he summoned servants and said, "Ye gods, I've lost my head. Find it." And they said, "But Your Majesty, it's there on your shoulders." He said, "It is not. I can't see it in the mirror. Nobody can show me my head." So they were rushing all over the place, looking for the head. Now the trick to that is, of course, that you are perfectly well aware of your head, only not in a form in which you expect to be aware of it. You expect to be aware of your own head in the same way as you're aware of other people's heads. But that wouldn't be true of you, because you've got an inside view on your head. You have an outside view on other people's heads, because, of course, you're taking an inside point of view. But the way in which you are aware of your head is in terms of what you are seeing and hearing. Because all sights and all sounds are what the nerves inside your head are doing. That's how to be aware of one's head. You are aware, therefore, of yourself, the mysterious self that you have, in terms of experience. Because there isn't really any difference. But that always escapes people, you see. So perpetually, so long as you don't understand that, you can be talked into going on to all kinds of weird excursions. And just so long as you believe it, you're a sucker. You're hooked. And it takes a tremendous inner confidence and nerve finally to say, "Hey, don't pull that stunt on me anymore. I see through your game." And because gurus are very clever at putting you down, but they're just trying to see how strong you are, testing you out, see if they can hoodwink you. So long as they can, you see, they're going to go on doing it, because they're going to get you to the point where they can't do it to you anymore. Then they're graduate.
Then we are graduates. And I wonder how many teachers and preachers and things like that are at that point where they know, they know they're sort of keeping you there where you can learn until you realize that you don't need to be there to learn. You need to go within to learn. But a lot of what I've learned, I haven't heard from across the pulpit. And which is, even a lot of Jesus's teachings and sayings themselves, much of the church seems like it's built on Paul's teachings rather than what Jesus said. So, and a lot of the things are, that Jesus taught are considered New Age now, but people don't, people assume that it's called New Age, so it's something new, but it's some of the oldest teachings that are out there now. So, so yeah, that was basically what I wanted to show with Alan Watts. There's a wealth of videos out there to watch, and a lot of them are repeating the same things. I found that I keep coming across where people will do compilations and you have to listen to the same parts over and over again, but it's so profound that it's not like you've wasted any time. It's like it's deep, so it's not like a waste of time at all. So let's see here. I want to thank Tana and Zark and Jose for keeping things in order. Not that we got any trolls tonight. I don't think we do anyway. And who else? We had some other people in here I could shout out to. I think Banjojo left for the evening, but maybe she'll watch later. So, no, I can see that you had to do some work there earlier, Jose. So good, I didn't even notice. Jennifer Barnes, thanks for hopping in here. Oh yeah, Casey Cat, thanks for hopping in here if you're still here. And of course Lightseeker. And you can check out Jose's channel. You can check out Lightseeker's channel. Jen's Gem. Jen's Gems is here. You can check out her channel as well. And were you saying that you had a channel too, Zark? If you have a channel, we need to check out your channel too. Make sure everybody's seen. And it's amazing that so many people have to talk, that everybody's got their own YouTube channels going, because nobody to talk to in real life. You've sort of got to get on YouTube and start chatting with people that can sort of get what you're saying. Everybody else is like, I think you're crazy. But at least we can be here online together, being crazy together. So so I want to thank, I guess you have to go back and watch Jen's Gems. I played some clips from Alan Watts that I think you'll enjoy. And for all of those watching later on, the links are all in the description. Definitely want to check that out, as well as the I Am discourses. I have a playlist for those that if you were watching the chat, you can see we're chatting about the I Am discourses. Excellent information on how to work on yourself, and that's sort of what got me out of my slump of feeling depressed and just impatient about things coming around, about things changing, just really wanting things to change for the better. And it's really helped me out a lot to realize that no one controls your emotions but you. I mean, nobody can make you mad. People can try, people can do things, and you can allow it to make you mad. But at the end of the day, if you get mad about something, it's because you decided to let something tick you off, you know? And so that's probably the biggest thing, because, you know, just dealing with trolls and in the comments and stuff like that, it's easy for somebody to say something offensive. And you know, I'm thankful for the comments, because it gives me time to sort of take a deep breath, where in person you might want to just, you know, hit them back with a reply before you think about it. But with comments, it's easier, because while you're typing it out, you're like, nah, that sounds mean, nah, that sounds mean. So a lot of good practice. I just hope I can learn to do it in person. And lots of love and light to all of you guys. Thank you so much for hopping in here, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.